Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Faisal Abbas and I am going to teach you this course called Research Methodology. I am Faisal Abbas. Once again, I am giving you my name and I am your teacher for this course. I have completed my PhD in Development Economics back in 2010 from Center for Development Research, University of Bonn, Germany, where I wrote my PhD dissertation on issues of health economics related to Pakistan. After completion of my PhD, I have been working with some development organization in flood-affected areas of Pakistan, where I spent few months collecting data, writing reports, data analysis and all that, and we have published a report on Pakistan's flood-affected areas, especially focusing on South Punjab areas of Pakistan. After that, I have joined ComSats and I am teaching in Department of Management Sciences as assistant professor. And also I am teaching this course to you and to other class, to your class. And I'm sure that today's introductory lecture will give you a brief outline as well as an introduction to what we will be covering and how we will be covering for the next 32 lectures for this course. I'll start with first slide, which is a course outline. I'm not going to give you topic-wise course outline, but a broad outline which actually tells us that what we are covering, how we are covering, and what are the specific broad areas of terms that we are going to cover. For example, we are going to see research and their realities and pitfalls. Why do we need research? What helps does this research process gives us, and how as a researcher, businessman or woman, we can have benefits from the research we do in the real life. So we will be trying to cover up realities and pitfalls of the research. Then definitely we'll see about the approaches, strategies and methods. What are the approaches that we use to answer a question that we want to research on? Suppose we want to research on a question that how to do small and medium enterprise business, and if that is our question, what kind of approach do we use to answer that question? Whether we are going to use data that we can collect by ourselves called primary data or survey data, or we will be using firm level data that already exists and we try to analyze using one or the other method to get our question answered. Same is the case with the strategies, that what kind of strategy we will use to help sort out the question that we ask. And again, the methods. We will be trying to cover all these definitional things in our introductory lecture, in the introductory lectures. And then the third thing that we try to cover is techniques and procedures for data collection and analysis. What kind of data we need and how do we collect that data? If we need time series data, that is monthly, biannually, annually, 6 monthly, whatever kind of data, weekly for example, or seasonal data that we need, for example, if we want to analyze that what kind of ice cream consumption pattern we have in summer and winter, so we need to have seasonal data for summer and winter ice cream consumption. Same is the case with survey data, that what kind of survey we want to conduct. Do we need random sampling? Do we need a stratified sampling? And what kind of analysis we will be doing with the data? Are we going to analyze data exploratory, or we describe data in simple formats? We just do some statistical simple things with the data, or we do some modeling stuff with the data to get our question answered. And then we will definitely be using information technology, how to search literature, how to find data, where the data sites are located, how do we approach them, how do we consult these data sites, how do we get our data if we need something to be done, how we can be able to see some of the literature that exists on the topic that we are covering, and all that things we will be using, we will be applying through appropriate use of information technology. And for that reason, to cover all these topics, the basic recommended books are Research Methods for Business Students by Zonder et al., which is written in 2009. And another book, Research Methods, a step-by-step guide for beginners by Ranjit Kumar. A little word about these two books. That Research Method for Business Students by Zondar et al. Is a book which covers almost every single step that normally researchers take to complete a research project. When they want to write a dissertation, when they want to write a research paper. And Research Method Step-by-Step Guide for Beginners is a book which basically covers some basic introductory stuff through charts, through graphs and through figures that every person who is starting research, who is trying to get some introductory things about the research, have to know about these things. And this assessment exercise for this course will be as follows. We will give you some tasks that have some marks attached with that, and I'm giving you some percentage distribution of these marks. So whenever a task is announced, we will ask you to do, let's say, quiz or some assignment or one or the other way. So then you will get, for example, whenever we announce a task, we give 5% to that. Assignments will consist of around 20% of the mark. Midterm will definitely get another 25% mark, and the remaining 50% will definitely be with the final term exams. This is the research process stepwise. This graph which you can see is basically starting from the very basic thing that tells you that that tells you your wish to do research. When you wish to do research, which is basically your aim in your degree course to do some research so that your degree can be completed. So what you do, your wish will then be your wish will then go to a stepwise process for doing that research. For example, the first step is to formulate and clarify the research topic. For example, if we want to formulate and clarify the research topic, we will be using chapter 2 of the Zondar et al.'s book to read about how to formulate and clarify a research topic. For formulating and clarify research topic, we'll try to see what are the ingredients, what are the essential things that one need, so that we can start from the very scientific way, very systematic way, how to come about with a research topic. Once we are in a position to decide about the research topic, its clarity and its way of doing, then we will be in a position to move further. So formulating and clarifying research topic basically gives you an idea that from a very broad topic, you are coming up to a specific issue that you want to clarify. For example, you are starting from financial economics, and then from financial economics you come to the financial markets. From financial markets you see that financial markets are linked to economic growth process in a country, and from that you will come to a conclusion that how financial market development leads to economic growth, let's say in case of Pakistan. That will be your clear specified topic, and if you want to pursue this further, you will be in a position to actually see things around this topic, so that you want to have some literature review or not. And that's our second step, that how to critically review the literature, which is actually covered in chapter 3 of the Zondar et al.'s book. And we'll be talking about this critical literature review in details in the next lectures. Few things are very obvious, and we have to see that critical literature review is the crux of the whole research process. Once you are in a position to find your topic, to formulate a research question, you have to do literature review. And literature review is basic thing that gives you number of things. First, you will get to know how this whole research area is growing with the passage of time. Secondly, you will come to know how this research is conducted by various researchers, empirically, quantitatively, qualitatively, and what are the areas that still need emphasis and where you can find some gaps, so that you can answer that gap through your research topic which you have formulated in step 1. This is the first role of critical literature review. Second role is to give you an idea of how to do your own research question answer. So it will also tells you what kind of methodology is used, what kind of data sets used, what kind of analysis used, and what are the results that got by the researcher when they empirically investigated the literature related to the topic that you want to clarify further. So this critical literature review is very important for researcher to start with, so that one can understand not only what has been done in the field of research that one want to do, but also helps in formulating and clarifying your research topic as well as your research questions and objectives. The third thing that is also a relevant step and important is understanding the philosophy and approach. What kind of philosophy you are using, whether you are going through an inductive approach or you are going to use a deductive approach. What kind of approach you use will definitely help you sort out what kind of data you need, what kind of analysis you need, and what kind of things that will help you to clarify the question that you have asked. This is the chapter 4 of the Zondar et al.'s book, and then you will be in a position to formulate your research design, which is covered in chapter 5 in much detail, which we will discuss definitely in the coming lectures. Negotiate access and address ethical issues. This is chapter 6, which is also very important part of your research step, because you have to negotiate access and you have to address ethical issues. For example, you need a data set to analyze a problem that you want to answer, but you don't have access to that data set. What you will do then? So you have to negotiate access. First, you have to think, clarify your topic of research. Once you are done with this topic of research, you basically have to ask yourself or the websites or the think tanks where the data set is available, whether you can have access to that data set or not. And if you don't have access to data set, then you have to think the ways to answer your question. What kind of data you can have access to and what kind of data you cannot have access to. So this is the how you can negotiate your access to data set, and then you have to consider ethical issues. For example, if you market a product in the market, whether it is ethical to do marketing in a way that does not hinder the culture and the custom of the particular community, or if it is hurting, you have to take full information about the culture and customs, and then you have to think how better you can communicate the message that you want to communicate. So ethical consideration is very important, especially in case of research where your audience is directly in contact with you. For example, when you want to do survey research, you don't have to ask some sensitive question, but if you want to ask some sensitive question which you are going to analyze in your research and you will write in your report, you will definitely have to tell the respondents that this is the information that you will analyze and include in your research process. So once it is done, your research is ethically approved, and one has to do this ethical approval for one or the other reason. And of course, we will then plan data collection and the data using by one or the other way. So these bottom 5 things will explain you how you have to do sampling, whether you are going for secondary data or not, whether you are going for observatory studies or observatory data, whether you need semi-structured or structured interviews and in-depth interviews, or you need a questionnaire to develop and then you have to collect the data. All these 5 things will be covered in various chapters of the book, and after that we will definitely be in a good position to know how to sample if we want to collect primary data, how to do sampling for primary data sets. Once we are in a position to do this sampling, we'll be in a position to see whether we need structured or semi-structured interviews, and for that what kind of questionnaires we need. So all these chapters are interlinked except this secondary data chapter, which actually tells you what kind of secondary data available and how to utilize them. So for example, secondary data can be time series and can be grouped from time series to cross-sectional, and it can be called panel data. So time series data, whether its frequency is weekly, fortnightly, monthly, annually, 6 monthly, or what kind of frequency of the data is available and what kind of frequency you actually need. All these chapters will help you to understand the data that you want to use, how to how you can make sense of your data, and how to do, let's say, questionnaire formulation, how to do sampling and all that. And furthermore, this process is still going on, and which will help us telling that how to analyze the data, whether we have qualitative data or we have quantitative data. If we have qualitative data, what kind of approach or methodology we will be using. If we have quantitative data, what kind of approach and methodology we are using. So these things we will be covering in chapter 12 and 13 of the book, and then we will be in a position to see that what kind of results we are having, and then we will be in a position to write our report, project, dissertation or research paper that we want to write. And then with that we have to understand how to present the results, and then we will be in a position to submit our project report and give presentation to the audience that we want to. For example, if you're writing dissertation, you'll be in a position to write your dissertation, you submit to your department approves, and you'll have to give a final presentation to get your dissertation passed and evaluated. This is a process which is actually adopted from Mark Zonder, Philip Lewis and Adrian Thornhill's publication in 2006. Terminologies that we are using are very important. We have to understand these basic terms very nicely from the very beginning, and this is mandatory, because if we don't understand these terms, we'll be in a big position not to understand the whole process. We have to understand the basic differences between the words method and methodology. What do we mean when we say we are using this method, and what do we mean when we say that we are using this methodology? So the simple definition of method is that it is techniques and procedures used to obtain data, while methodology is the theory of how research should be undertaken. Method is a small step within methodology. Within methodology, you are in a position to understand and know that through what techniques and procedures you are going to get the data. Whether you are using survey data, questionnaire data, primary data, secondary data, time series data, monthly, biannually, 6 monthly data. What kind of data you are using and how you can get that data is basically comes under the terms methods. And when we are talking about methodology, we are actually talking about the theory of how research should be undertaken. The whole process of research is methodology. That you have a research question that you want to answer. For that research question to be answered, you have done literature review, you have come up with some objectives and research questions, and for that you need some data and methodology to analyze that data. After the analysis, you come up with some results and conclusions, and all these process comes under methodology. Nature of research. We have to understand the nature of research also, that what kind of research we are doing, what nature of research actually help us to solve some real life problem. We can have bogus survey and research, we can have real research. What is the difference between a bogus survey versus a real research? A real research is actually methodologically rigorous, and the findings that we have after real research are interpretable. So whatever findings we have, we can interpret them in real life situation. But with bogus research, we cannot. So let's see what is a bogus survey or research. First point is that statistics are hard to obtain and interpret. We can either are unable to obtain the statistics about one fact or the other, or we are unable to interpret the fact. So let's say if we know that the GDP of Pakistan in 2011 is 10%, what does that mean? Unless we know in what context we are talking about GDP growth, we cannot be in a position to interpret that 10%. If we are unable to interpret that 10%, that means that finding GDP figure of 10% make not much sense for our research. But when we talk about that whenever Pakistan have 10% GDP, its employment will reduce by, let's say, 2%. I'm just giving you an example that if GDP is increasing, with that increase in GDP, unemployment is reducing, then we are in a position to say that our research is real, which is actually taking us to some conclusion which is interpretable in real life, that increase in GDP growth leads to reduction in unemployment in Pakistani case in this example. Second point about bogus survey or research is that it is difficult to know if the situation is getting better or worse. So we are unable to see anything. For example, a news reporter says that the flood hit this and that area at 12 at night and it remained there. The flood water was passing that area for almost 4 or 5 hours after that. So what do we conclude from that? We are unable to conclude anything concrete from there. So it might be that water has hurt the livelihoods of the people, but we don't know whether it has hurt or not. So we have to understand that newspapers, news writing is different than the real research. News is basically an information that is passed on from one individual to another individual through one or the other means, but real research is basically talking about a problem which can be solved through rigorous steps that are scientific systematic steps that are taken by the researcher to analyze the question and then to answer that particular problem of the real life. Third is that program producers will not allow to talk about the complexities of method, but will use numbers to horrify viewers, like about floods, earthquake. So suppose there is an earthquake, people are dying, livelihood is disturbed and all that. You will get to know that you have got 2 billion losses in terms of lives, livelihood, animals, house and all these things, but you don't know how somebody has estimated this thing. So this is one of the complexities that you don't know. So in that case, the methodology you don't know, and the rigor of the methodology also you don't know. So this is how your research become bogus unless it is interpretable. So if it is not interpretable, it becomes not a real research. And that's basically the hallmark of real research, that your methodology must be rigorous as well as the findings that you have must be interpretable. What is not research and what is research then? These are the two small things that we have to clarify first. Just collecting facts or information with no clear purpose, that we collect information but we don't know what is our purpose. For example, we know that in Pakistan we have 100 banks. So what do we do with that? Or let's say we say that we have in Pakistan 100 banks, out of which 70 banks are government but 30 banks are private banks. And we don't know why we collect that information and what kind of analysis we will be doing with that information. So if that is the case, that cannot be called research. Just knowing the numbers without clear purpose does not make us realize that it is a research. Reassembling and reordering facts or information without interpretation. We just reorder facts and figures without interpretation. For example, we'll say that in 2001 in Pakistan we have 30 banks, but in 2010 we have 45 banks, 50% increase, and out of that we have, out of 45 banks we have 25 banks which are in private sector. But we don't know that why do we need these numbers, for which reasons we are talking about these numbers, and how do we are in a position to interpret this information that we are collecting. So what is research then in that case, if we have some data and we don't know the purpose, and something that people, researchers and scientists undertake in order to find out things in a systematic way, thereby increasing their knowledge. So the research is basically finding out things in a systematic way that will add up to the knowledge that you have. So the thing that gives you an information might not be a research, but research is a thing which actually adds systematically to the knowledge that one possesses. The characteristics of the research: it is clear in purpose. So research must have a purpose to find out things. So what question you want to answer? So for example, we want to answer that why private banks are unable to proliferate in rural areas of Pakistan, which is a real life research question. We will try to analyze facts and figures, data sets, opinions and other policy documents, and we come up to the conclusion that because of lack of infrastructure, because of illiteracy, because of this or that reason in Pakistan's rural areas, it is difficult to have some private bank. Or maybe poverty is another reason to explain the lack of rural banks in Pakistan. So this is how our research is purposeful, and it helps us to find out things that adds to our knowledge that we already have. Data are collected systematically. So the data that we want for the analysis of that particular research question, we have to collect that data systematically. For example, if we want to see how firms are operating under various constraints, or financial firms are working under various constraints. Let's say in 2008 we had financial crisis, and various financial firms has some problem in one or the other way with that financial crisis. And if you want to see how these firms fared when the financial crisis hit, then we have to know the size of the firms first, that whether we are talking about small size firms, medium size firms or large size firms. And if we know the size of the firms, we'll be in a position to know that those firms which are related to international market more are highly likely to get hurt more when the financial crisis hit, versus those firms which are less integrated with the international market might get less hurt when financial crisis hit the international market. So we have to understand that what kind of data we need and how do we need that data, how do we collect that data. So all the things that we want to answer, we have to do it systematically. Data are interpreted systematically. So when we come to the stage of analysis, we analyze the data, and based on the data analysis, we will be talking about the interpretation, and we will interpret keeping our research question as well as our objectives in mind. We cannot talk about anything that is not relevant to what we are talking about in our research question. We'll only talk about the analysis and the interpretation which covers our research question and objectives. If that is the case, then we are saying that we are doing a research which is real research, which is helping us and adding us to our knowledge. What do we mean by systematically and to find out things? Systematic means, or systematic way suggests that research is based on logical relationship and not just beliefs. So we have to have some logical relationship rather than belief. We need to understand the phenomena that makes two things, independent and dependent variable, to interact positively or negatively. Let's say we are talking about financial market development versus economic growth. Financial markets develop, they help economy to invest more, so that will help economy to grow more. So the simple positive relationship between financial markets and economic growth is well established. So if we are talking about systematic way of research and it is on logical basis, then it is called that our research problem is systematic. It is not, it will be illogical or unsystematic when we say that whenever there is more rainfall, for example, then this or that party will win election because of this or that reason. But then rainfall has nothing to do with election turnout. So if that is the case, we are unable to logically build a relationship between two variables. Secondly, to find out things suggest multiplicity of possible purposes of research. For example, our research can have many purposes. Number one, we are describing things. Number two, we are explaining things. Number three, we are trying to understand how one or the other phenomena is occurring in one or the other society, or how financial firms behave when, let's say, financial crisis hit them. We are criticizing one or the other theoretical basis, one or the other real life implication of research, or we want to analyze the data and want to come up with one or the other conclusion. So these are the things that suggest or add to our knowledge and hence become systematic way of finding out things. Features of research. Basic and applied. We have to understand whether we are talking about basic research or applied research. Basic research is basically a research which is done by the people sitting in universities to broad horizon of our knowledge or existing knowledge that we have about one or the other phenomena. For example, expanding knowledge of processes of business and management. The way business is conducted in one context is different from the way it is conducted in another context. So for example, if you want to start a business in Pakistan, it is different than if you want to start a business, let's say, in USA. So the way of understanding the processes of business and management, and if you want to expand the knowledge about these purposes, you are actually adding to the basics of the research. So you are talking about basic research, while applied research is when you want to understand, when you want to improve the understanding of particular business or management problem. So for example, if you want to understand that in firms where higher ups are more, they can have conflict of interest, and due to that conflict of interest, maybe the objectives of the organization or the business remain unfulfilled. So how to avoid conflicts between higher management to get maximum out of the business. So this is an understanding of the particular problem and try to solve that problem. So this is an applied research for business and management thing. Results in universal principle relating to process and its relationship to outcome. So result is solution to the problem. In applied research, the results is the solution of the problem. We kind of find a problem, we try to analyze it systematically, we get some data, we analyze it, we interpret results, we come up with one or the other solution, and we say that this problem which is faced by this financial or management firm can be solved by this or that way. Now, this is an applied research, but basic research gave a generalizable results which can be used not only for one particular firm but all the business and management firms regardless of where they are located. So this is the advantage of basic research, that the horizon of basic research is broader than the applied research, because applied research is trying to figure out a particular issue or problem and want to solve that problem in particular context, but basic research want to expand the already existing knowledge. So applied research create a knowledge that is limited to the problem that we want to answer, and that is not the case with the basic research. Basic research add to the overall knowledge. Whatever kind of overall knowledge we have, basic research adds to it, while applied research adds to the limited knowledge of that particular problem that we want to answer through our research. In applied research, findings are of practical implication to, let's say, business managers. For example, a business firm has this or that problem, and through some research we are in a position to find out solution to that problem. This solution is helpful tool for business manager to improve their efficiency, productivity and working environment in that particular business firm. While basic knowledge is of significance to the firms that are in the same business in different contexts or within various societies. So we have to understand that basic research actually adds to the existing knowledge about a particular phenomena, let's say the business or the management thing, but applied research tries to answer a particular problem faced by a business or managerial firm. Some key debates about research and research processes are that it is knowledge production. We already talked about that research always adds systematically to find out things, and it adds to our knowledge. It can be mode 1 knowledge or it can be mode 2 knowledge. It helps in trying to fulfill research practice gap. So research should not be only for the papers or for researchers, scientists and academicians or university teachers and students, but it should help solve real life problems. So there must be a gap fulfillment between research and practice. So whatever researchers and scientists are doing must have some practical life relevance. It must be evidence based or it can be basic and applied research. These are the debates that are there, that whether you want to have basic research or not. At national level, when you want to set up agendas for research and development, you definitely see the national policy goals, whether you are in a position to do some basic research or not, which is predominantly the case in industrialized countries like USA, Germany, Canada, Australia, where they are in a position to spend much money to do some basic research, where they can produce new knowledges to understand phenomena that are occurring globally. But in a developing country context, for example in Pakistan, we are in a position to fund an applied research which actually tries to solve some problems Pakistan currently facing. Let's say energy crisis we are facing or water crisis we are facing. Currently we had flood and earthquake. So how do we deal with climate change, natural disaster? So we have to understand that whether we are in a position to go about applied or basic research. So these are the key debates that we have to understand. Now I'm going to talk about what is mode 1 knowledge and what is mode 2 knowledge. Mode 1 knowledge is basically emphasizing research questions that are set and solved by academic interest. So it can be basic and applied, but academic interest questions are answered. So how caste affect your voting behavior, how ethnic or religious affiliation behave your selection of party to vote for. Recently we are going to have we will be going to have elections, so this example can help us understand the emphasis of mode 1 kind of research, which is done by the academic interest or people those who are in academic interest. It is emphasizing on basic or fundamental research rather than applied one, and little focus on utilization of the research by practitioners. So it is to some extent close to what we studied in basic research. Mode 2 kind of knowledge is emphasized on research covered by the world of practice. So how do people practice when they are in business or management? And it is highlights the collaboration both between and with and between practitioners. So within the same organization, how practitioners interact and deal, while between two organizations, how practitioners deal with each other, what kind of problems they face, what kind of conflict of interest they have. This is basically the thing that one see in mode 2 kind of knowledge. Mode 2 kind of knowledge offers a way of bringing together the supply side of knowledge represented by universities with the demand side of knowledge represented by the business. Hence it is focusing more on applied research, applied side of things. The supply side is basically what researchers want in university, and demand side is that what real life people, business managers need to solve their problems in their firms. So this research which is conducted in university brings in close connection with what is the real life problem in business firms, and that will help to solve out the problems and issues that they are facing. And this is mode 2 type of knowledge. What are the stages of a research process? We have already seen that we are trying to cover up this course through various steps by, let's say, formulating our research question, and then we go step by step systematically to answer the question that we want to answer. So stages of research process are very simple, and that we will try to cover up in the coming lectures. But today I'm just giving you an overview of various stages. That one is formulating and clarifying a topic, which we have already discussed in a brief detail a few slides before, that you have to formulate and clarify the topic that you want to do research on. We have to understand that in which particular area you want to work on and what kind of topic you want to select. And once you are done with that formulation and selection of your topic, then you'll have to review the literature. After reviewing the literature, you have to design the research. Research designing is very important because that is the most important thing that you have to do after doing a literature review. Once you come up with your topic and you did literature review, you are in a position now to say that these are your objectives, this is the research question that you want to answer, and to answer this research question and to fulfill the objectives of your research, this kind of data you need, the methodology that you want to use, and what kind of analysis you will come up with to interpret the results that fulfill the objectives you have in your research process. So designing the research will definitely help you understand what kind of data needs you have, how you will get that data, why you need that data in this format, what kind of methodology you use to analyze the data, and after that analysis, what will you do with that. So after designing the research, you will go for collecting the data. You need to collect data because you want to analyze the data, and after analyzing the data, you sit and write your, let's say if you're writing a dissertation or research paper or research report. So you have to understand that whether you're writing a dissertation or not, or you're writing a research paper or you're writing a research report. Format can be different, but stages of research process in all these are more or less similar. And these are few steps that one has to take whether you want to write a dissertation or research. Things to consider. For doing research, we have to consider the following things. Number one, impact of your personal feelings and beliefs. If you're doing research and you are a researcher, you have to come up with your own beliefs and feelings. If you add up your personal feelings and beliefs in the research, that research process will become biased. And that biasness in the research process will not lead you to a new knowledge production or answering a problem that you want to answer. For example, if you're doing an applied research and you want to answer such thing, then if you add up your own personal feelings and beliefs, that will definitely have some impact on the research and the way you are conducting the research. Access to data, you have to understand that what kind of data you need and whether you have access to data or not. And if you don't have access to data, how you can alternatively get the data to answer the research question that you have asked through your formulation of research topic. Validity and reliability of the data. When you are in a position to get access to data, then you will be in a position also to know whether this data is valid and how reliable this data is. Validity and reliability of data actually makes sense when you want to analyze long-term phenomena. For example, in time series, you want to see how with the economic development, Pakistan's health status in Pakistan or people's lifestyle has changes. So if you don't have reliable data for that, you cannot be in a position to see that whether development economics or economic development add to improvement in the lifestyle in Pakistan or not. And if that is the case, that will mislead you to results which will not help you to formulate policy that help to solve your problems. So we have to understand validity and reliability of the data. You have to know the time and other resources that you have. For example, if you're doing a master level dissertation, maximum you have 12 months or minimum you have 6 months to analyze your data, to come up with a research topic, to do literature review, and to write a research paper or dissertation that is the requirement of your university. So you have to understand the time frame that you have with you to write the dissertation or the research paper that you want to write, or research report, for example, for your organization you are working for. So you have to understand the time and other resources. If you want to collect primary data, for example, in a province in Pakistan, You need to travel to that province, and you need economic and financial resources so that you can conduct the data collection process smoothly. If you don't have resources, that will definitely hamper the research process and data collection process for you. So you have to understand time availability and resource availability at the same time. And ethical issue that we have already discussed, that you need to understand the ethical issues that are involved with your research, whether you are in a position to ask this question or not. And if you are asking that question, or if you are taking a photograph of certain place, whether you are allowed to publish that photograph or not, whether you are allowed to publish that comment with name or not. If somebody says that he or she is giving this comment, but he or she did not or does not want to have their name published with that comment, so you have to understand ethically this consideration also when you are publishing the paper or research or dissertation, or when you are writing research in your organization or university. So ethical issues are also very important to consider. Things to consider are very important things that one has to see while going through the research process step by step. You have to avoid your personal feelings and beliefs. You have to see the access and availability of data. You have to see your time availability and financial resources and other resources available to you. Your data is reliable and valid or not make more sense for you to analyze when you want to analyze the data for solving a problem. And definitely you have to consider ethical issues. Business research. What actually is business research? So first is that it is transdisciplinary. Transdisciplinary means that not only you have to understand the business ethics or the business market or the business issues for particular research question, but you have to understand custom, culture and values of that particular community and society where your business is working. For example, if McDonald's is opening a branch in Pakistan, they would not have be selling for example alcohol, because Pakistan is an Islamic state and where alcohol is not allowed. So you have to understand the transdisciplinarity in business research, that you don't have to be good in business and financial aspect, but also understand custom, values, religions and rituals of that particular place. Number 2, business research engages theory with practice. So what are the theoretical links that exist, how to hypothesize these links in real life, and how to come up with practical solutions through using these theoretical hypotheses. So if theory says that financial markets help economy grow, then we have to link using data whether really financial market development leads to economic development in a country. Involve undertaking systematic research. Business research is also a systematic process. When you do business research, you do things systematically. You come up with a topic, you do literature review, and you come up with some gaps, identify the objectives of your research, and then you find out the data needs of your research. After data needs, you will definitely be in a position to find out the methodology that you use to analyze the data, and you come up with some analysis and results, you write up that results, and these are the systematic steps that you take to analyze certain problems. Should be undertaken with rigor. We have to do this process rigorously. We should not take a step-by-step systematic process easily. We have to do rigorously. For example, if you want to analyze literature review, or we want to do a literature review, we don't have to summarize the previous studies that exist on that particular topic, or the range of topics that we want to cover in our research. We don't need a summary, but what we need is basically what kind of gaps that still exist when people try to estimate one or the other relationship. What was wrong, what was not empirically estimated through these research that your research want to estimate. So we have to find out not only the gaps, but also the problems and pitfalls of the research, the empirical or the theoretical research that is already done on the topic. This is how business research become an important, prominent part of research methodology. This is a very important figure diagram which actually is known as a research onion, because if you see, it is a layer wise process that you have to understand. Either you start from the smallest layer or you can start from the outer layer, and you can come up with the same thing. You understand the whole process in one go, and this research onion helps you to understand stepwise the whole research process. For example, the very outer circle, you have seen some things that are written like positivism, realism, interpretivism, objectivism, subjectivism, pragmatism, radical humanist, radical structuralist. All these things all these things are basically philosophical aspect of research process. You have to understand that when you want to analyze a particular problem, or when you want to analyze a particular research issue, which philosophical aspect of that particular research you are covering. Are you talking about realism? Are you talking about positivism? We will briefly cover these philosophies of research in our next lectures, but at the moment I'm just giving you a hint that how you step by step move from philosophy to approach, from approach to strategy. Philosophy is our first layer, approach is our second layer, from approach to strategies, that is our third layer, from strategies to choices, that is our fourth layer, from choices to time horizons, that is our fifth layer, and from time horizon to techniques and procedures, that is our last and sixth layer. Approaches are deductive and inductive. We'll definitely talk about deductive and inductive approaches. We will see whether we are going to conduct a research which tells us about the already existing hypothesis and theory, or we are collecting data that will help us to build new hypotheses and new theoretical ground. So if we are verifying already existing hypotheses and theories, it is deductive. When we come up with new theoretical insights using data that we have collected, we will definitely be doing inductive research. We'll come up on details in the next lectures. Then we will definitely be talking about strategies. A strategy is basically the way we will be getting our data, whether it is an experimental study, whether we are going to do a survey, whether we need a case study, where we are doing action research, where we are doing research grounded on theory, we are conducting ethnographic research, or we are doing an archival research. Step by step we will try to see what are these things, how do these help us to understand various problems, and when we conduct research, then we will be in a position to know that what kind of strategy actually we are using for our own research, whether our research is case study or is it a survey research. So this is how we can understand. The fourth layer of onion tells us about the choices. What kind of method we are going to use? Is it a mono method? Is it multi-method? Or is it mixed method research? Then we definitely talk about time horizon, whether it is cross-sectional, that we need information from individual in particular area and at particular time period. Is it time series, whether we are talking about monthly, weekly, annual time series data that we are going to analyze, or we are talking about longitudinal data that combines cross-sectionals and time series both. And then we will definitely be talking about techniques and procedures, data collection technique and data analysis procedure. And then we are in a position to write up our results and come up with a dissertation that we are supposed to write. This research onion is basically summary of the whole course that we want to cover under this research methodology course. We will one by one try to cover various steps, and under these steps how things are occurring, how these things are happening, and how we'll be in a position to better understand various steps to conduct the research process more rigorously, more scientifically, and more systematically. This research onion help us, number two, understand how various steps are overlapped. So for example, what kind of philosophy you use will definitely have some interpretation for what kind of approaches what kind of approach you want to use. And when you know the approach and philosophy of your research, definitely that helps you to strategize your research process. Whether you are going to do experimental, whether you are going to do case study, whether you want to do action research or some other kind of research like ethnography. And once you know the strategy of your research, you will definitely be in a good position to do choice of method that you want to do, that you want to use for your research, whether it is mono or multi-method, or you can mix both and you come up with mixed methodology. After the choice of that, you need to know the time horizon of your data, whether you want to use cross-sectional data, whether you want to use longitudinal data or time series data. And once you are in a position to decide that, then you will be in a position also to decide what kind of data analysis and data collection procedures you use to do some analysis and come up with your dissertation. So this research onion is very important. One has to understand the various layers of the research process so that you can understand the systematic rigor in the research methodology process that is summed up in this research onion. Research proposal. We have to understand that before going into the detail of dissertation, we have to write a research proposal that you have to submit to your supervisor. Once he approved, then the department has to approve research proposal, and based on that research proposal, you are in a position to write the dissertation that you want to write, let's say for your master's or MBA or MS course. And for the research proposal, you have to have the purpose of research proposal, which is very important to understand. Once you don't understand what is the purpose of research proposal, you are not in a position to understand actually what you want to do, how you want to do, and why you want to do. So purpose of research proposal basically gives you an idea of what, how, and why. For example, research proposal determines what the researcher wants to do. Within research proposal, you actually propose your topic, you propose the research question that you want to answer, your objectives that are related to the question that you want to answer. Then with some literature review, you come up with the gap that your study tries to cover up. And with that gap, you actually identify that what kind of data you are going to use. And with that data, you will be in a position to say what kind of methodology you are employing to analyze that data. And once you are in a position to talk about these various steps, you will be in a position to propose your research topic. And that is how you come up with a research proposal. So the purpose of research proposal at first is to determine what researcher want to do. Secondly, why it is important, convincing, and worth undertaking. So you have to write in your research proposal the aim of your research and why you want to conduct that research, how convincing it is, what kind of problems, issues your research questions tries to solve, and how important and convincing it is, so that the department or your supervisor get convinced and ask you to go about this question and try to answer the question. How the researcher wish to undertake. You talk about the data and methodology in your research proposal and what kind of data and methodology you will use to answer the question. And then in the end, you will definitely see the policy implication or the benefit that will result from the research proposal or the effort or the attempt that you are doing. So if and when you are understanding, you are in a position to understand the purpose of research proposal, you will be in a better position to write proposal in a way that makes sense for your supervisor to read, comment on it, and come up with an idea that makes sense for you and for your dissertation also. So one has to understand the purpose, and the basic purpose of research proposal is to give an idea of what, how, and why. what you want to analyze, how you want to analyze, or what problem you want to sort out, how you want to sort out, and why you want to sort out. So it should be convincing, it should be systematic, it should be understandable, it should be reliable, and it should be convincing, so that you can come up with some policy guideline that benefit from the effort that you are doing. Elements of research proposal. We'll definitely be talking about what a research proposal consists of. Step by step, one has to come up with a research proposal, and what are the elements of research proposal one must know, because once you know the purpose of research proposal, you'll definitely have to understand the elements of research proposal. And when you know the elements of research proposal, then you will be in a good position to write research proposal in a systematic manner, so that whenever somebody want to read your proposal, can understand the various steps involved in your writing of research proposal. For example, first step is to introduce the area and the question. What is the broader area of your research and what question you want to answer? You have to introduce modestly, briefly, comprehensively the area that you want to research on, and after that introduction you have to come up with 1, 2, or at most 3 research questions that you want to answer in your research proposal. After introducing the area, you have to come up with research questions, and then you have to write your study objectives. Within introduction, you have to write questions and the area that you want to introduce research on, and after that you have to write study objectives. Study objectives are basically the aims that you want to fulfill using one or the other data sets and methodology. You come up with some question, and based on the question you come up with some objectives, and based on these objectives you actually clarify questions and the way you want to answer that question. Then you have to propose the research design of your study, setting of the study, and instruments plan to be used. Proposed research design actually tells you how long it will take to complete the research, how you want to conduct data collection process, what kind of data you need, which choice of method you will use, what kind of data, how you will collect the data, and all these things that you will explain in your proposed research design. And after that proposed research design, you will talk about the setting of the study, that what kind of setting your study will be. Will it be talking about a survey research, an experimental or ethnographic research? And then the instruments plan to be used, what kind of data you need, whether you need time series data that you are going to use from economic survey, or you are going to use survey research by formulating a questionnaire and ask researchers or field workers to go in the field, ask the people the question that you want, and get the answer back to in the questionnaire format. A sample design and sample size. Of course, if your research is ethnographic, or you are going to conduct a survey, or you are going to conduct a semi-structured or structured interviews, you definitely need to understand the design of the sample and the size of the sample. So for sampling design, you have to understand whether it is stratified sampling, random sampling, stratified random sampling, or simple random sampling. You have to understand the design, and then the size you have to understand. There are statistical tools that are used to determine the size of the data, what kind of size you need, because you cannot analyze population, but you have to analyze a sample. And for sample size selection, there are statistical tools that can be used to determine, for example, if you want to interview university students about one or the other phenomena, then you need to understand the total population of the university students, and out of that, how much sample size is reliable to collect data so that you can interpret your results. Based on that data, you have to determine the size, and you have to determine the sample size. Because you cannot collect data from all the students of your class, or all the students who are male, or all the students who are female, all the students who are only in bachelor's or in master's or in PhD, but you have to do stratified random sampling or simple random sampling, so that you can have a representative sample. Also, you have to select the sample size so that you can represent, your sample can represent the whole population. So sample design and sample size is very important process in survey and questionnaire research. If you mislead by sample design and sample size, then your research results can be biased, and that biasness leads you not to interpret results in different contexts, and policy lessons that you will learn from your research might mislead you. That's how you have to understand the process of sample design and sample size, an important step or element of the research proposal. You have to elaborate very clearly about the sample design and sample size. Once you are clear about your sample design and sample size, you will be in a good position to collect data in a timely and speedy manner. Outline the proposed chapter for the dissertation. You have to outline the whole dissertation in your research proposal. Once you are done with these steps of introducing your area and research question, your study objectives, your research design, setting of your study and instruments planned to be used, with your sample design and sample size, now you are in a position to write an outline of the proposed chapter for the dissertation. You have to outline each and every chapter that you want to write, what you want to write in each and every chapter, and how you want to write each and every chapter. So you have to understand your dissertation, and after understanding your dissertation, you have to outline each and every chapter in proposal, that how many chapters this dissertation will consist of, and what the first chapter will be talking about, what will be the topic of second chapter, how you elaborate third chapter. Let's say if your dissertation consists of 5 chapters, then you have to understand that what you are going to write in first, second, third, fourth and fifth chapter. What will be the subject of chapter 1, what will be the subject of chapter 2, and so on. So if you understand that, you have to outline briefly each and every chapter within proposal after sample design and sample size, so that the readers must know that how your dissertation will look like. Definitely you are not going to write the whole dissertation in proposal, but you are kind of outlining each and every chapter so that one can understand what kind of chapters you can have, why you are including these chapters, and what you will be writing in these chapters when you are writing your dissertation. Studies, problems, limitation, and future area of research. Definitely you have to write about what are the problems with your study, what are the limitations of your study, and what researchers should focus in future when they want to research on the topic of interest you are researching on. So you have to talk about the study limitations, that what kind of limitation this study has. Might be you're conducting a youth survey in your own university. So one of the limitation is that you are not conducting research in other universities, so you can talk about in research limitations that you are conducting youth survey only in your own university, while it can be more profound, reliable and representative when you conduct that research in other universities. Not only in other universities of, let's say, Punjab, but if you conduct other research, other universities of the Pakistan. Across Pakistan, if you conduct that research, that will help to understand the phenomena more better, in a more relaxed and more better way. So you have to talk about the future area of research. You have to talk about limitation. From limitations, definitely you come up with the future area of research. So for example, the limitation of your research is that you are conducting research only in your own university, and future research can focus on various universities within the same province or within the country in Pakistan. And you can also disaggregate data between public and private universities, between large and small universities, between old universities which are there in Pakistan for, let's say, 30-40 years, while those universities which are there in Pakistan for, let's say, from last 5 to 10 years. So you have to understand these dynamics when you're writing the limitations and future research aspects of your research topic. And definitely you have to propose a time frame, which is very important, especially when you're doing a research project or you're writing an MS dissertation. You have to come up with time frame. In proposal, you have to come up with time frame because that makes sense not only for you and your supervisor to understand the various stages of research and the time that you need to complete one step from one step to another step, and from that step to another step. Your supervisor must be with you when you propose a time frame. You have to propose a time frame, ask your supervisor to comment on that, so that one can understand that is it understandable, does it make sense for you, because you cannot waste too much time on literature review, or you cannot waste too much time on collecting data, because your limited time cannot be wasted in various activities while you are unable to write your dissertation. So you have to understand things in different perspectives. So you have to propose a time frame that makes sense from each and every step that you want to take. So from formulating research topic to come up with analysis and write up, you have to formulate an Excel sheet where you, let's say if your time is 6 months to submit a dissertation, or from 6 to 9 months, or from 6 to 12 months, then you have to divide each and every activity stepwise in different weeks and months, so that you can also understand that in which week you will be at what stage, and your supervisor also know that in which week you are doing what kind of activities, so that he can come up with some ideas to give you. If you're collecting data, if you're doing literature review, he can come up and give you the idea about how to do literature review. When you're writing your literature review objectives and research question, he must be on board to understand what you're writing, how you're writing, and why you're writing. So once again, I'll just recap small steps or elements of research proposal. Number one, you have to introduce the area in the question. Area is basically the broad research area that you want to research on, let's say financial market development, and the question that you want to ask. For example, how financial market leads to economic growth in an economy. Study objectives, what are the study objectives? You have to clarify 3 to 5 study objectives, and then you have to write about the proposed research design. After writing about the proposed research design, you have to talk about the setting of the study, and after setting of the study, you have to talk about the instruments that you plan to be used for your study. You have to be very careful when you decide about sample design and sample size. After designing your sample, you have to size the sample so that sample selection is representative. And after that, you have to outline the proposed chapters for the dissertation, which is very important element of the research proposal. That outlining the research chapters will help you to understand that what you are going to write in the next few months in your dissertation. And once you know that, you will be in a good position to see and to look into the research literature, reports, dissertation, other published material and secondary sources, that what kind of information and analysis, what kind of information basically you need that is already available and published, so that you can come up with the whole dissertation. Study problems, limitation, and future areas of research. Of course, you have to understand that what are the limitations of your study, and once you understand the limitations of your study, then definitely you will be in a position to say something about the future areas of research for those who want to research on the topic of research you are researching on. And then the most important element of research proposal is proposing a time frame. You have to have a time frame in your mind, because it might be possible that your dissertation must be 6 months and you have to submit that dissertation to your department within 6 months. Within 6 months, a simple idea is that you can divide your activities on weekly basis. You can come up with an Excel chart which divides your 6 months into weeks. So every month has 4 weeks, for example, so 6 multiplied by 4 into 24 weeks, and then you have at least 5 to 6 steps from formulating research to analyzing and writing your dissertation. 6 or 7 research steps you can divide into various weeks, and you can propose that in this week you are conducting this kind of research, while this kind of a step, and in this week you will be at this stage of your research. And this is how you come up with some good idea by yourself, that whether you will be in a position to frame your research in the given time period or not. And if it is not, you have to reframe the time available and the activities that you are conducting. Whether you can be in a position to finish in 6 months or not, you have to reframe the time slots available with you. You can also reframe your activities that you are doing. You can also shorten the activities, some activities, while speeding up some other activities. And these various steps will help you to complete your research, to complete your dissertation in the giving and proposed time frame that you have proposed. Today we are going to end here. We have actually talked about introductory things about the course that we are going to study, that is research methodology. I've introduced the books that we are following. Also, I have introduced various steps that we conduct in research process. And why do we need a stepwise approach? Because we want to make it a rigorous process, a scientific and systematic process. So we move stepwise. So because we want to understand each and every step, and each and every step is actually interlinked. So this is how we can move from one step to another step, and from another step to another step, so that we can understand the whole research process. And whenever we have one or the other problem with one or the other step, we can actually come up with that same systematic approach to solve that problem within the research framework. And within the research framework, I have shown you a research onion, which actually shows you various layers of research process that we want to do, the approaches, strategies, philosophies that we follow, and what kind of data and data analysis that we conduct. And research onion is one of the very important thing that one has to consider when you want to understand from very philosophical stage to very data level analysis and write up what kind of steps that person take. Then we come up with the purpose of research proposal. What purpose research proposal actually solves or serves. So basic thing that I told you is that the research proposal should or must answer at least these 3 questions, that how, what and why. So what you want to do, how you want to do, why you want to do. If your research proposal is answering this question, your writing purpose for research proposal is solved. Now you have to see the elements of research proposal. After clarifying the purpose of research proposal, you have to see the element of research. And the elements of research proposal are actually starting from very beginning, that is introduction of your area and research question, to research objectives, to study design, to sample design and size, to a proposed time frame. All these steps one by one are the elements of research proposal. So elements of research proposal actually helps you, number 1, to sort out the purpose of the research proposal. Number 2, to solve the problem of writing research proposal. Number 3, helps formulating and formatting the time frame that you have. And number 4, helps you to determine whether the time frame you have versus your objective can synchronize with each other and make sense or not. For example, you can have some objectives and you know that your time period for writing a dissertation is 6 to 12 months, but it might not be possible for you to come up with all these objectives and answer the question that you want to answer in your research proposal. So you have to see things critically, whether the given time frame and the research objectives are justifiable or not. And if these research question and time frame are justifiable, then your research proposal is approved and you can go and write dissertation. I'll end up here. Thank you very much for your attention and everything. And next time we'll be starting from the very first topic called formulating and clarifying the research topic. I hope to see you again. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.